It was supposed to be an ordinary summer afternoon in 1965. Children laughed, swings creaked, and the sound of a ball bouncing echoed across a neighborhood playground. But by sundown, 3 children were gone. Their toys lay scattered in the sand. A swing swayed in the wind, and silence fell over a place that hours earlier had been alive with joy. Parents screamed their names into the dusk, but no voices answered back. Days turned into weeks. The police scoured alleys, rivers, and basements. Posters covered telephone poles, prayers filled churches, and fear gripped every home. Then, years later, a man confessed. He said he had taken them. He even described where the bodies could be found. Families braced themselves for the terrible closure they had dreaded for so long. But when investigators dug where he pointed, they found nothing. No bones, no clothing, no graves. How could a killer confess in detail and yet leave behind no trace? Was he lying? Or was there something darker? Something that kept the children hidden even after death? If this happened in your town, what would you believe? Where are you watching from? Comment your country below. Subscribe for more mysteries that refuse to stay buried. And so we begin the story of children who vanished into silence, and a confession that only deepened the darkness. You begin with the playground itself. A small patch of sand and grass framed by chain-link fences. Its swings squeaking gently in the summer wind. The year is 1965, the kind of summer where the air is thick with heat. The streets echo with transistor radios, and children play outside until dusk. You imagine the scene clearly. A group of kids chasing each other, sneakers pounding on pavement, laughter carrying into the humid evening air. Parents sit on benches chatting idly, cigarettes burning down, keeping one eye on their children and the other on conversation. It is ordinary. It is safe. Until suddenly it is not. By sundown, 3 children who had been there all afternoon are nowhere to be found. Their toys remain. A small red ball rolling lazily near the swings, a half-finished popsicle stick melting into the sand, a bicycle leaning against the fence with its wheel still spinning. But the children themselves? Gone. Not a scream, not a struggle, not a single witness who can say where they went. You picture the panic as parents realize what has happened. Voices rise, calling names again and again, louder each time. Cars circle the block with headlights sweeping over empty sidewalks. Mothers run door to door, knocking frantically, asking neighbors if they've seen anything at all. But every answer is the same: no. The children were there, and then they weren't. The police arrive quickly. Patrol cars with flashing lights crowd the curb. Officers search bushes, alleys, garages. They question every teenager hanging on the corner, every stranger walking past. They expect at first to find them within minutes. Children wander, they hide, they play tricks. That's what children do. But hours stretch into night and the playground stays silent. Imagine the fear creeping into that neighborhood. Streetlights flicker on, shadows stretch across empty swings, and the absence of laughter becomes unbearable. Mothers cry openly. Fathers grip flashlights so tightly their knuckles whiten. Police dogs sniff the ground, but the trail evaporates in the summer air. It is as though the children stepped out of existence. Still, hope remains in the first hours. Maybe they followed an older kid down the block. Maybe they fell asleep in a shed. Maybe they're hiding just beyond the fences, waiting to be found. But hope shrinks as dawn approaches. Parents who once tucked children into beds now sit in kitchens, faces pale, unable to speak. The playground, once a place of joy, becomes a crime scene marked with tape. The media arrives next. Local reporters scribble notes, cameras flash. Headlines the following morning scream, "3 children vanish from playground." The word spread quickly, carried on radios, whispered in shops, printed in bold black ink. Neighbors who once waved casually now glance with suspicion. Who saw them last? Who was nearby? Everyone becomes both witness and suspect in a town suddenly smaller than ever. The investigation begins. Detectives interview every parent, every neighbor, every shopkeeper. They collect statements, but the puzzle refuses to form. No one remembers screams. No one saw a car pull up. No one noticed strangers. The children simply cease to be. And then the search expands. Volunteers comb parks and riversides. Helicopters circle overhead, their spotlights sweeping across rooftops. Police drag nearby ponds, expecting to find evidence in the murky water. They knock on doors, basements are searched, attics inspected. Yet at the end of every day, the answer is the same. Nothing. Still, the small details grow heavier. The red ball is logged as evidence. The bicycle is taken away. A shoe left behind in the sand is photographed. Each item is ordinary. Each item feels haunted. And you, watching this unfold, can sense how quickly the narrative changes. What begins as a missing persons case starts to sound darker. Detectives whisper about abduction. Journalists speculate about predators. Parents begin escorting children everywhere, refusing to let them out of sight. The neighborhood playground, once filled with laughter, is deserted. The swings swaying in the wind like reminders. But then the first strange lead emerges. A man claims he saw a dark sedan parked near the playground just before dusk. He remembers it clearly, an unfamiliar car, engine idling, windows tinted. But when police press for details, his memory falters. Was it blue? Was it black? Did he see children get in? He cannot be sure. Another woman insists she saw a man walking with two of the missing children, holding their hands. But when shown photographs, she cannot identify the man. Her story collapses under pressure. Leads turn into dead ends. Days pass. Then weeks. Posters with the children's faces are tacked to telephone poles, taped to shop windows, pinned in post offices. Families gather at churches praying aloud. The case spreads to state authorities, then federal. But the absence only grows heavier. And just when you think the search has exhausted itself, a chilling discovery deepens the mystery. A neighbor recalls hearing a sound that night. Not screams, not shouts, singing. A child's voice, faint, drifting from the playground long after it should have been empty. She didn't investigate. She assumed it was an echo or a radio. But when questioned days later, she swears it was real. Police return to the playground, scouring it again as if the answer might reveal itself with enough effort. But there is nothing. Only sand, swings, and silence. You imagine the anguish of the parents now, weeks into the nightmare. The way they sit in darkened kitchens, staring at empty chairs. The way children's toys gather dust in corners. Birthdays pass with no candles blown out, and the silence at night grows heavier than any noise could. Still, whispers spread through the community. Some insist the children were taken by someone they knew, someone trusted. Others believe they wandered too far and met with accident. But beneath the theories lies something worse, the possibility that no answer will ever come. And as summer turns to autumn, the case remains unsolved. The playground stays empty. The swings creak in the wind. And the neighborhood learns to live with fear. Until years later, when a man confesses and everything changes. You begin with the investigation tightening around the neighborhood. In the weeks following the disappearance, police knock on every door, search every garage, crawl through basements with flashlights. They map the playground from every angle, reconstructing where each child had been seen last. They interview siblings, classmates, teachers. They even bring in psychics, desperate for a thread when logic yields none. You imagine the faces of detectives as days stretch into weeks. Their eyes bloodshot, ties loosened, ashtrays filled to the brim. They know the longer the children remain missing, the less likely they are to return alive. And that thought gnaws at them even as they continue their search. The press hammers relentlessly. Headlines grow bolder. Playground of fear. Where are the children? Television crews film empty swings swaying in the wind, overlaying them with haunting narrations. Reporters crowd the parents, shoving microphones at tear-streaked faces demanding sound bites. For the families, grief becomes public spectacle. Neighbors grow uneasy. Suspicion creeps into conversations. Parents stop trusting babysitters. Children are forbidden from walking alone. A man walking his dog too late at night becomes the subject of whispers. A car parked too long on the curb earns a call to police. Fear warps the rhythm of daily life. Still, investigators press on. They follow every lead, no matter how faint. One man, a drifter seen near the playground days earlier, is detained. His record shows petty theft, loitering, nothing violent. Yet neighbors insist he looked suspicious. Police interrogate him for hours, probing every detail of his alibi. But in the end, his story holds. He is released. The neighborhood breathes uneasily, knowing the real answer remains out there. Another tip points to a factory worker who lived near the playground. He was seen talking to children weeks earlier, offering candy, lingering too long. Police search his home, pulling up floorboards, scouring the basement with dogs, but they find nothing. No evidence, no trace. He becomes a name whispered in bars but never charged. Theories ripple outward. Some say the children were taken by someone within the community, someone trusted. Others insist it must have been an outsider, a predator who drove in and out undetected. The absence of struggle, the lack of witnesses, the silence, it all suggests precision. As though the children were plucked from their world in one deliberate moment. And then, a cruel pattern begins. Over the next 2 years, other children vanish in nearby towns. A girl walking home from school never arrives. A boy disappears while delivering newspapers. Each case stirs old wounds. Each disappearance feels connected, though police cannot prove it. Newspapers whisper about a serial predator. Parents fear a monster walks among them. You picture the fear spreading like smoke. At night, windows close earlier, curtains drawn tight. Fathers patrol porches with shotguns. Mothers clutch their children's hands with painful grip. Trust, once the foundation of the neighborhood, erodes. Every glance between neighbors carries suspicion. Every stranger becomes a threat. Still, investigators chase shadows. They establish task forces, share files between towns, map the disappearances on boards with red string. Patterns emerge, then collapse. Each lead fades into silence. And the silence grows heavier with time, but then something breaks. In 1969, 4 years after the playground vanished into silence, a man is arrested in a nearby county for unrelated charges: burglary, assault. Nothing unusual for the time. But when detectives search his home, they find something unsettling. Photographs of playgrounds, newspaper clippings of missing children, small toys tucked away in drawers. The man is interrogated for days. At first, he denies involvement. Then slowly his story changes. He admits he has watched children. He admits he has taken them. His words are vague, unsettling. Detectives press harder. He grows agitated but then calm, almost proud. Finally, he says the words the parents had feared for years. I took them. I know where they are. Imagine the shockwave. Newspapers explode with headlines. Families brace themselves for the closure they both crave and dread. Police mobilize following his directions. They dig where he points. They prepare to uncover what has been hidden for years. But what they find is not closure, it is nothing. No bodies. No graves. No trace of the children at all. The man insists he told the truth. He describes details only someone present could know. The color of the ball left behind, the sequence of swings, the names the children called each other as they played. He knows too much to be dismissed. And yet when the ground is torn open, it yields only dirt and silence. You feel the horror deepen, because if he truly took them, where are they now? And if he lied, how did he know so much? The confession, instead of answering questions, only multiplies them. Police are left with the worst possible outcome. A killer who admits to crimes but produces no evidence, and families who are left with neither closure nor hope. And that is where the story turns darker. Because soon, investigators begin to wonder if the man's confession is not the whole truth, but only the beginning of something more terrifying. You begin with the interrogation room. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting harsh shadows across the suspect's face. The man sits calmly, his hands folded, his eyes drifting between detectives as if he holds the power now. Cigarette smoke curls in the air. The clock ticks loudly, and every pause feels like another wound to the families waiting outside. He repeats his confession. Yes, he took the children. Yes, he knows where they are. He describes the afternoon in chilling detail. The way they laughed. The way one of them begged for just 5 more minutes on the swings. The way the bicycle leaned against the fence. He even remembers the red ball. Detectives exchange glances. These are not details the newspapers printed. He knows them because he was there. You can feel the air tighten in the room. The man directs police to a wooded area outside of town. He speaks with confidence, pointing on maps, describing landmarks. Officers rush to the site, diggers brought in, shovels piercing earth. Families gather, trembling, praying for an end to their nightmare. But when the ground is broken open, there is nothing. Only roots and rocks. The suspect does not waver. He says they dug in the wrong place. He shifts slightly, gives new directions. Another site. Another dig. Again, nothing. And then another. Again, silence. Each time the earth yields only dirt, and each time he insists they are close. Weeks pass like this. Crews excavate fields, riverbanks, abandoned lots. The cost rises. The pressure mounts. Detectives grow exhausted, their boots heavy with mud, their patience thinning. But the man smiles faintly each time as if enjoying the spectacle. And here lies the horror. If he is lying, why confess at all? And if he is telling the truth, why are the graves always empty? The community fractures under the weight of confusion. Some believe the police are incompetent, digging in the wrong places. Others insist the man is toying with them, feeding off their grief. Neighbors gather in small circles at night, whispering theories, secret accomplices, hidden tunnels, cover-ups. The story grows darker with every retelling. You imagine being a parent then, watching this unfold. One day you brace for closure only to be handed more silence. Another day you cling to the idea that truth is near, only to see dirt fill in holes that yield nothing. Grief mutates into anger, then despair. The swings in the playground rust now, abandoned. Each creak a reminder of absence. Reporters seize on the drama. Cameras roll at every dig site, broadcasting the spectacle nationwide. Headlines scream, "Killer confesses," graves still empty. Talk shows speculate. Psychologists debate whether the man is delusional, whether he craves attention, or whether he is hiding something more sinister. For the public, it becomes entertainment. For the families, it is torment. And then a darker possibility emerges. Some investigators begin to suspect the man is telling only part of the truth. That he did take the children, but he did not kill them. That they were handed off to someone else, to something else. A network, a cult, a force beyond him. His confession may be real, but incomplete. And if that is true, then the empty graves are not lies. They are warnings, but no one can prove it. You picture detectives sitting in dim offices staring at case files, their coffee cold, their hands trembling with exhaustion. Each report adds weight, not clarity. Each new dig drains hope, and still the man sits calmly in his cell, his faint smile never fading. Still, there is one moment that chills even the most hardened investigators. During one interrogation, when pressed about why the graves are empty, the man leans forward, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. He says, because they were never meant to stay buried. Detectives freeze. The phrase is strange, haunting, deliberate. They ask what he means. He refuses to elaborate. He leans back, folds his hands again, and stares silently until the session ends. The words leak into the press, never meant to stay buried. They become a headline, a phrase repeated on television, in papers, in living rooms. To some, it sounds like taunting. To others, prophecy. To the families, it is unbearable. The town begins to unravel. Parents pull their children out of schools, fearful of shadows. Businesses close early, unable to function under the cloud of fear. Churches overflow with prayer meetings, candles lit in windows at night, and yet nothing changes. The children are still gone. The graves are still empty, and the man, he remains calm, content, as though he knows something no one else dares to say. You imagine standing outside the courthouse watching him escorted in chains. Crowds gather, shouting, spitting, demanding answers. He does not flinch. His faint smile lingers, as though he controls the story, not them. As though the truth lies not in what he admits, but in what he refuses to say. The trial begins, a spectacle of testimonies, evidence, and theories. Prosecutors present his confession, his details, his toys hidden in drawers. The defense argues he is delusional, seeking attention, incapable of telling truth from lies. Experts debate endlessly. The families sit in court, silent, clutching photographs of their children, waiting for words that never come. And just when you think the trial will reveal clarity, it collapses under its own weight. Because without bodies, without graves, without proof, a confession is not enough. The jury is divided. The judge grows impatient. The public grows restless. And in the end, the case teeters on the edge of collapse. But then, in one final twist, the man stands in court and says words that freeze the room. You're digging in the wrong places. They're still out there. And the silence that follows is heavier than any verdict. You begin in the courtroom. The air is thick with whispers, the smell of polished wood and ink from reporters' pens filling the space. The man sits at the defendant's table, suit too large, hair combed back clumsily, hands folded calmly on the surface. Around him, families clutch photographs of children whose faces smile from black and white prints. The judge presides with stern eyes, the jury fidgeting under the weight of responsibility. From the first day, the trial feels different. This is not simply a question of guilt or innocence, it is a battle for truth itself. Prosecutors paint the man as a predator, a monster who lured children into silence. They present his confession, his knowledge of details, his collection of toys and clippings. They show the jury photographs of the red ball, the abandoned bicycle, the empty swing set. They insist only a killer could know these things. But the defense counters with a devastating truth. There are no bodies. Without graves, without remains, without physical proof, the confession becomes shaky ground. The defense argues he is delusional, obsessed with attention, constructing stories out of news reports. They parade psychologists who call him narcissistic, incapable of distinguishing fact from fantasy. They suggest he memorized details overheard from neighbors, pieced together gossip into a false confession, and the jury wavers. You imagine sitting in that box, listening day after day as evidence piles up but never solidifies. The man knows too much yet gives nothing concrete. He points to fields, to riverbanks, to lots that yield only silence. You would ask yourself the same question everyone else whispers. If he killed them, where are they? Outside the courthouse, the town simmers with anger. Crowds gather daily, chanting, holding signs that read, "Justice for the children." Reporters push microphones into faces, capturing every sob, every shout. Families sit silently, their grief turned into spectacle. And above it all, the man smiles faintly, as if he controls the narrative, not the system. Still, certain moments chill even hardened reporters. On the second week of the trial, prosecutors replay his interrogation tape. His voice fills the courtroom, steady, cold. "I took them. I know where they are." The silence afterward is unbearable. You imagine the families covering their ears, unable to listen yet unable to look away. But the defense strikes again. They highlight inconsistencies in his timeline. They note he cannot recall the weather that day, cannot name the store near the playground, cannot describe details of the parents. They suggest his knowledge is coincidence built from fragments. And though the prosecution fights back, the seed of doubt grows. Still, one phrase lingers, gnawing at everyone who hears it. They were never meant to stay buried. The courtroom holds its breath each time it is repeated. Prosecutors say it is proof of his guilt, a slip of truth. The defense says it is meaningless rambling. But for the families, the phrase is worse than either. It suggests something they cannot accept, that their children remain out there, unseen, unfound, perhaps even alive. And with that suggestion, the community fractures further. Some parents cling to hope, believing the children may still be somewhere, waiting. Others reject it, knowing decades have passed. Neighbors argue in bars, churches, kitchens. Was the confession truth, lie, or something in between? The town becomes divided, suspicion sharpening old wounds. Reporters seize on the fracture. Headlines shift. Were the children ever found? Killer confesses, but where are the graves? Television specials dramatize the playground, the bicycle, the empty swings. National audiences watch, horrified, fascinated, debating in living rooms. For outsiders, it is a mystery. For those who live there, it is trauma. And then, in the middle of trial, something unsettling happens. One of the jurors collapses suddenly in the box. Paramedics rush in, declaring it exhaustion. But whispers spread quickly. Was it stress? Or something else? The juror is replaced, but suspicion lingers. The case already feels cursed. The trial drags on for weeks. Witness after witness testifies. Detectives recount their fruitless digs. Psychologists debate his mind. Parents sob on the stand. The man remains calm, speaking rarely, but each word sharp as glass. And then, in closing arguments, the prosecution begs the jury, do not let the absence of graves silence the voices of these children. The defense responds coldly. Without evidence, you cannot convict a man simply for words. The jury deliberates for days. The town waits in agony. Reporters camp outside, their cameras ready. Families hold hands, praying, bracing for anything. And when the verdict is read, the world seems to stop. The jury cannot agree. It is a mistrial. You feel the collapse like a punch. Decades of grief, months of spectacle, weeks of testimony, and nothing. The man returns to his cell, still smiling faintly. Families scream. Mothers collapse. Fathers curse the system. Reporters race to phones. Headlines prepared in advance. No justice in playground case. The man remains unconvicted, but what happens next is worse. As he is escorted away, he turns to a reporter and whispers words captured faintly on a microphone. You're still looking in the wrong place. And suddenly, everything fractures again. You begin in the silence that follows the mistrial. The gavel has fallen. The judge has left the bench. The jury has dispersed. Families stumble out of the courthouse, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. Some cry openly, collapsing on the courthouse steps. Others stand motionless, stunned into silence. Years of waiting, weeks of testimony, endless nights of prayer, all for nothing. The man, still unconvicted, is led back to his cell. Chains rattle softly, his faint smile never faltering. Reporters swarm the exit, their microphones pointed like weapons. Headlines race through printing presses. No verdict in playground murders. Television anchors speak with hushed tones, calling it a failure of justice. The nation watches. The town breaks. You imagine being a parent then, clutching a photograph of your child, realizing there is no answer, no closure, no justice. The graves remain empty, the confession unresolved. The playground where it began lies abandoned. Its swings rusted, its sandpit overgrown with weeds. What was once laughter is now only silence. Still, the man's words echo. You're still looking in the wrong place. They spread through the community like poison. Neighbors repeat them in bars and kitchens in whispered conversations over fences. Theories multiply. Some believe he meant they were hidden deeper in places yet untouched. Others whisper of rivers, caves, even abandoned mines. A darker few suggest he never killed them at all. That the children were given to someone else, someone powerful, someone untouchable, and the absence of proof feeds the fire. Detectives who worked the case are haunted. They revisit old files late at night, their eyes red from exhaustion. They replay tapes searching for hints in the man's tone. They study maps, circling sites already dug, wondering if one more dig would make the difference. But the silence in the ground has already broken their faith. The media thrives on the chaos. National magazines run lurid covers. The empty graves of 1965. Television specials show mothers crying, fathers raging, playgrounds deserted. Talk shows invite psychologists, priests, and conspiracy theorists to argue about the meaning of his words. The story becomes bigger than the town. It becomes legend. You sense how fear mutates into paranoia. Parents refuse to let children outside. Neighbors accuse each other of knowing too much, of hiding secrets. Rumors swirl about cults, syndicates, even government experiments. The line between fact and imagination blurs until the case becomes more myth than memory. And through it all, the man in his cell grows bolder. He begins writing letters, cryptic messages to reporters, to strangers, to anyone who will listen. Some arrive smeared with ink, others scrawled neatly. In each he repeats the phrase, "Wrong place. Wrong place." Sometimes he adds more. They were taken higher. Not buried, but kept. Each word stirs new fear. The families receive letters too. Some open envelopes to find only a child's drawing. Others discover phrases written in jagged script. Still alive. Investigators cannot prove he wrote them all, but the handwriting matches. For parents already tormented, the letters are knives twisting in wounds. Still, the system cannot hold him forever. Without conviction, his case grows weaker. Lawyers argue for reduced sentences on unrelated charges. The possibility of release hovers like a storm cloud. The community erupts in outrage, demanding he never be freed. Petitions flood state offices. Vigilantes mutter about taking justice into their own hands. And then one night, a crowd gathers outside the jail. They chant, they throw stones, they demand the man's head. Police hold the line, but the chaos grows violent. Windows shatter, fires spark. The town feels on the verge of collapse. All because the graves are empty. Still, the man remains calm. From his window, he watches, faint smile unbroken. To him, the noise outside seems proof of his control. He holds the story. He holds the fear. And he knows it. But the story does not stay contained to the town. Soon the federal government takes interest. FBI agents reopen files, interview witnesses again, dig through transcripts. They analyze his letters, his confessions, his timelines, and quietly, some admit what the families have long feared. The man may not have acted alone. It is a chilling thought. Because if there were others, if there was a network, then the children's disappearance is larger than one man. And suddenly his words, "wrong place," still out there, sound less like taunts and more like truths. You picture the unease rippling outward. Other towns revisit old disappearances. Other families wonder if their missing children were part of the same story. A patchwork of cases begins to form, dots connecting across maps. What once seemed like one tragedy now looks like a thread in something bigger, and the man sitting in his cell seems to know it. Each time reporters shout questions as he's escorted to hearings, he repeats the same thing. Still alive. Still out there. But the real terror comes with his final whisper. During a rare interview with a journalist, leaning close to the microphone, he says softly, "You've never looked under the playground. The words freeze the room. The tape airs that night, sending shock waves across the nation. The playground, the original scene, the place already searched countless times. Had something been missed all along? Detectives rush back, tearing into the earth, ripping up concrete, sifting sand. Families gather once more, hearts pounding. Cameras roll, the world waits, and what they uncover beneath the playground is not what anyone expected. You begin at the playground itself, the place where it all began and the place everyone thought had already been exhausted. The swings creak in the wind, their chains rusted now from decades of rain. The sandpit is overgrown, weeds pushing through what was once the center of children's laughter. Reporters gather with cameras. Parents clutch rosaries, police cars line the street with sirens off but lights flashing faintly. This time, the search is different. The words, "You've never looked under the playground," are too specific, too haunting to ignore. Heavy machinery is brought in. Floodlights cast harsh beams into the night. Crews in hard hats and FBI jackets begin tearing into the ground. The neighborhood crowds close, held back by barricades, their breath visible in the cold. At first they find nothing. Layers of soil, roots, discarded trash from decades gone by. Bottles, rusted metal, toys left behind by other children long after 1965. Each object pulled from the earth draws gasps, each one examined for meaning, and still the hole grows deeper. But then a discovery. Beneath nearly 6 feet of packed soil, workers uncover something unnatural. Wooden boards, laid out deliberately, like flooring. They pull them up carefully, and beneath a narrow cavity, dust and stale air rush upward. The crowd murmurs, the cameras zoom in, detectives lean forward. Something is down there. The cavity is just large enough for a man to crouch inside. Flashlights reveal scraps of fabric brittle with age. A child's shirt sleeve, a single sock, a broken shoe buckle, objects too small to be coincidence. Evidence bags are filled quickly, each item photographed meticulously. The families watching collapse into sobs. The first physical evidence has finally surfaced. But wait. The deeper they go, the stranger it becomes. The cavity isn't a grave. It's a tunnel. Narrow, crudely dug. Reinforced in places with rotting planks. It stretches away from the playground, disappearing into darkness. Investigators crawl inside, their voices echoing as they map it with flashlights. The tunnel runs beneath the street, beneath houses, turning and twisting until it branches into multiple shafts. Each one ends in a small chamber, and inside those chambers they find more. Toys, marbles, a rusted lunchbox, a hair ribbon, crayons scattered across dirt. The kind of items a child would clutch, drop, leave behind, yet no bodies, no bones. No sign of death, only traces of life interrupted. You can imagine the horror. Families watch as evidence bags emerge filled with what looks like the ghostly remnants of childhood. The media erupts, secret tunnels under playground, the phrase plastered across newspapers nationwide. Psychologists speculate on television. Was this a hiding place? A trap? A lair? Theories multiply, each darker than the last. The town spirals into hysteria. Some claim the tunnels prove the man's guilt beyond doubt. Others argue they suggest more, a network, accomplices, a larger plan. Neighbors remember strange noises at night, unexplained digging sounds decades earlier. Old men recall workers leaving the area hurriedly, as if construction had been abandoned. Every memory is twisted into new evidence. The FBI takes over the site completely. Ground-penetrating radar scans the neighborhood. More tunnels are uncovered, spreading like veins beneath the earth. Some collapse as crews enter. Others reveal empty chambers, each one littered with fragments, shoes, toys, scraps of fabric, but never bodies. And here the story grows darker, because what they do find is a message, scrawled in chalk on one tunnel wall. faded but legible. Still alive. The words freeze investigators. Experts confirm the chalk dates back decades, likely the 1960s, but who wrote it? A child? The man? Someone else entirely? The phrase echoes the man's own letters, his courtroom whispers, his confessions. Still alive, you can feel the paranoia spreading. Families begin to hope again. Painful, dangerous hope that their children survived, kept somewhere else. Others dismiss it, calling it a cruel trick. The community divides further, the wound deepening. Still, investigators press on. They follow the tunnels to their ends, but most collapse into dirt. Some lead to dead ends. Others open into cellars of abandoned houses long since sold or demolished. Each discovery raises new questions but answers none. Meanwhile, the man in his cell grows louder. He hears of the tunnels on television and laughs. Reporters note his words, "I told you." Wrong place, still out there. His faint smile spreads wider, his calm demeanor shifting into triumph. He has regained control of the narrative. Detectives despise him yet cannot deny he knew something. The tunnels, the evidence, the chalk, they align too closely with his words. But still the essential truth eludes them. Where are the children? Why no remains? Why only traces? And then, another revelation chills everyone. In one chamber, among marbles and broken toys, investigators uncover a locket. Tarnished, rusted, but intact. Inside, a faded photograph of a young girl smiling. On the opposite side, scratched into the metal with something sharp, a single word. Alive. The evidence is undeniable now. The locket belonged to one of the missing. Families collapse in grief. Reporters shout questions and the nation stares in disbelief. Yet again the phrase repeats. Alive. You imagine the terror of holding that locket in your own hands, knowing it was last touched by a child who never came home, or by the one who took her, and yet the graves remain empty. As days turn into weeks, the playground becomes a dig site of endless tunnels, chambers, and artifacts. The town itself is scarred, houses damaged, streets ripped apart. Families who once prayed for closure are left with more torment. Each object confirms presence, but nothing confirms fate. And through it all, the man whispers from his cell, "I told you. You'll never find them where you're digging." Still, investigators push further. They expand the search beyond the playground, following rumors of abandoned warehouses, river caves, forgotten basements. Some leads yield more fragments, a shoe, a ribbon, but again, no bodies. And then, in the midst of frustration, one FBI agent notices something chilling in the map of tunnels. The shafts do not spread randomly. They form a pattern that looks eerily like letters. The agent traces the lines, connects the chambers, overlays them with aerial photos. Slowly, the word emerges. It is crude, uneven, but unmistakable. Carved beneath the earth, spanning blocks of the town, the tunnels spell out a single word. Alive. The discovery rocks the case. Reporters scream it across headlines. Families faint. Detectives stare in disbelief. Did the man dig them himself? Did others help him? Was it a message from the children? The theories spiral, darker than ever. And as the FBI closes off the playground entirely, the town realizes one thing. The mystery is no longer just about missing children. It is about something larger, something that has been hiding beneath their feet all along. But then, the real horror begins. Because one of the tunnels doesn't just end. It stretches further, deeper, leading out of town, and no one knows where it goes. You begin with the discovery that shakes everything. One of the tunnels doesn't stop. It stretches away from the playground, burrowing deeper, leading beyond the boundaries of the neighborhood itself. Investigators follow it cautiously, crawling through dirt and rot, beams of flashlights bouncing across rough walls. The air grows stale, colder as though untouched for decades. And then, after nearly 50 yards, it veers downward, into darkness no one expected. The town holds its breath. Floodlights are rigged. Fans pump fresh air, cameras record every step. FBI agents descend into the tunnel, their boots sinking into damp soil. They push deeper, finding support beams half collapsed, the ground unstable. And then suddenly the tunnel opens into a vast chamber. Inside they find more artifacts. Rusted cans. A child's backpack, straps frayed. A cracked doll head, its eyes staring blindly in the dark. A notebook. Pages melted by water but faint scribbles still visible. The handwriting looks small, childish. Some letters are legible. Fragments of words: help, cold, dark. The chamber stinks of mildew, yet no remains lie within. Only fragments of life, as if the children once passed through but never stayed. The silence of the chamber is worse than any grave. Word spreads instantly. Reporters broadcast live. Parents collapse as the news hits. For some, the notebook is proof that their children were alive longer than they thought. For others, it is unbearable torment. Help, cold, dark. Words from the mouths of their children frozen in time. But wait, this is not the end. Because the chamber contains another tunnel, narrower, tighter, leading deeper still, away from the town entirely. Its direction points toward the forest outside the city, a place already whispered about in local legend, where children had been warned never to wander. The FBI debates how to proceed. Some argue the tunnels are too unstable, too dangerous. Others insist they cannot stop now. Families demand answers, chanting outside the barricades. And so the dig continues. As crews press forward, the town spirals into hysteria. Rumors flood the streets. Some insist the tunnels were part of a larger network, built deliberately, maybe decades earlier. Others whisper of cults using the chambers for rituals, of traffickers moving unseen. Conspiracy theorists descend, holding signs that read, "Government knew. Children taken underground." The town becomes circus and nightmare at once. You imagine being there, standing at the barricade, watching floodlights turn night into day, hearing the muffled thud of shovels beneath your feet. Every vibration feels like a secret being pried loose. Every hour that passes drags the town deeper into obsession. Meanwhile, the man in his cell laughs. He hears the reports, sees the headlines. To journalists who visit, he repeats the same phrase. Wrong place. Wrong place. You're getting closer. His smile widens, his calm replaced with something manic. He demands to speak to FBI directly, offering more directions in exchange for privileges. Authorities debate whether to listen. Some argue he knows too much to ignore. Others warn he thrives on attention. But still his words leak into the investigation. And then, a chilling revelation. One of the tunnels leads directly beneath a church. The discovery ignites the town. Protesters swarm the streets, accusing religious leaders of complicity. The priest insists he knew nothing, that the building predates the tunnels. But suspicion poisons the air. Families storm out of pews, churches stand half empty, faith fractures. The case has not only consumed the community, it has dismantled its foundations. Still, the dig presses onward. Tunnels stretch further, collapsing, branching, twisting like veins beneath the earth. Each chamber holds fragments, toys, clothing, drawings on walls. Some show stick figures, children holding hands. Others are darker, scribbles of eyes, cages, words repeated endlessly. Dark, dark, dark. Psychologists studying the artifacts claim they are evidence of prolonged captivity. Experts argue over timelines, but no one agrees on the ultimate question. Where did the children go after these chambers? And here the story twists further, because investigators discover ventilation shafts hidden in the forest miles outside town, rusted grates, camouflaged beneath moss. When opened, they reveal stale air rising from below. The tunnels stretch farther than anyone imagined. Not just under the playground, not just under the town, They sprawl outward unseen like the roots of something malignant. You can sense the dread tightening. The scope is larger, the mystery deeper. Families realize their children's disappearance may not have been a single act of violence, but part of something sprawling, deliberate, and organized. But then, another artifact chills investigators most of all. In one chamber, they find a row of small chairs. Wooden, child-sized, lined neatly against a wall. Dust covers them, but they are unmistakable. Empty chairs waiting. It is a sight that silences even the most hardened agents. To see the impression of children's presence without the children is worse than any grave. The media seizes on the image. Photographs of the empty chairs appear on front pages across the nation. Talk shows debate their meaning. Were the children forced to sit there? Were they taught? Were they waiting for something? Theories spiral, each one darker than the last, and still the man in his cell whispers, "Still alive." The phrase has become refrain, curse, prophecy. Families want to believe. Investigators refuse to. Yet the evidence feeds both sides. The pressure grows unbearable. The FBI prepares to shut down the dig, declaring it unsafe. Families beg them to continue. Protesters clash with police at barricades. The town teeters on collapse, and then, in the final days of digging, another chamber is uncovered. Larger than the rest. A chamber lined not with toys but with crates. Inside the crates, government-issue supplies. Blankets, cans of food, medical kits, each stamped with dates from the 1960s. The revelation stuns investigators. These were not just crude tunnels dug by a single man. They were stocked, prepared, maintained. Someone, some group, had resources, planning, intent, and in that moment, the case changes forever. Because this is no longer the story of a lone killer and 3 missing children. It is the story of something larger, hidden in plain sight beneath the town, stretching into the forest, supplied and sustained for reasons no one dares to say aloud, but still, one question hangs heavier than all. If the children were kept alive, where are they now? You begin in the largest chamber yet discovered. Floodlights cast long shadows across the dirt walls, illuminating crates, rusted tools, and scraps of fabric. FBI agents move carefully, cataloging each item. The smell of damp earth mixes with the metallic tang of rust. Reporters shout questions from barricades, their voices muffled by the distance. Families stand in silence, clutching one another, waiting for answers that never seem to come. The chamber is unlike the others. It is larger, carefully reinforced with evidence of deliberate construction. Beams hold the ceiling in place. Pipes suggest ventilation. Wooden pallets once served as beds. On the walls, faint chalk drawings, stick figures holding hands, a sun, a house childlike, innocent yet haunting. Among the crates, investigators find more government supplies, blankets, medical kits, food rations, each stamped with dates from the 1960s. Evidence bags fill quickly. Experts argue about the meaning. Were the tunnels built for survival? For experiments? For captivity? No answer feels complete. And then in one corner, agents uncover a box unlike the rest. Inside, dozens of small personal items, lockets, bracelets, toys, each one tied to a child who never came home. Families collapse as they recognize them. Mothers scream. Fathers sink to the ground. The artifacts confirm presence, but still no bodies. Imagine the despair of holding a child's bracelet in your hand, knowing it belonged to someone who vanished decades ago, but never finding the child herself. The objects are proof, but also torment. Evidence without closure. The town fractures completely. Some demand the tunnels be sealed, erased, forgotten. Others insist they hold the key to truth. Protesters flood the streets. Conspiracy theorists descend with cameras. Neighbors turn on one another with suspicion. Churches fill and empty, hope and despair crashing like waves. The FBI issues statements promising answers, But behind closed doors, agents admit confusion. The tunnels are too extensive, too deliberate, too connected to be the work of one man. Files are opened quietly, marked classified. Theories circulate in hushed voices. Trafficking networks, Cold War experiments, cult activity, government involvement. Each possibility more chilling than the last. And through it all, the man in his cell grows louder. He tells reporters, "I warned you. They're still alive." He refuses to say more, smirking as cameras capture his face. To the families, his words are daggers. To investigators, they are riddles. To the public, they are fuel for endless speculation. The media spins the chaos. Headlines scream, "Secret tunnels of 1965, alive or dead." Talk shows dissect every artifact, every drawing, every word. Documentaries air, each with different conclusions. The story becomes legend, whispered in classrooms, repeated on playgrounds. The irony is unbearable. A story born from a playground becomes the ghost that haunts every playground after. Years pass. The playground is eventually sealed. The tunnels filled in. Houses are rebuilt, streets repaved. But the memory never fades. Families keep photographs on mantels, candles lit in windows. The town grows older, quieter, but the wound never heals, and still the questions remain. What happened to the children? Were they buried deeper, beyond the reach of shovels? Were they taken further along tunnels that stretched into forests no one finished mapping? Were they handed off to others, kept alive for reasons no one dares to speak? Or were they victims of something even darker? Something history has chosen not to reveal. You picture yourself walking past that playground today. The swings are new, the sandpit clean. Children laugh, run, climb. Parents watch from benches. On the surface, it is ordinary again. But beneath, in the minds of those who remember, the tunnels still breathe. The shadows still whisper. And the absence still lingers. And perhaps that is the cruelest truth of all, because a grave gives closure. But an empty tunnel, a chalk drawing, a locket scratched with alive, those give only torment. And so the story ends as it began, with silence. But the silence is heavier now, because if the children truly were never meant to stay buried, then where are they? And now the question falls to you. If this happened in your town, what would you believe? A lone killer lying for attention? A hidden network using tunnels beneath our feet? A government cover-up? Or something stranger? Something that cannot be explained at all? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Some stories were never meant to stay buried. Don't let them vanish. Keep them alive with us.